58 written versions of the story, and that the French can claim to be the first to actually put the story down in writing, but that in 1812, the brothers Johann and Wilhelm Grimm wrote the first collection of German folk tales, and it was called Kinder- und Hausmärchen, which means children and household tales. And in that book were 89 German folk tales, and I just want to read you a list of just a few of the stories in there. Mm-hmm. Cinderella, Hansel and Gretel, Rumpelstiltskin, Rapunzel, Sleeping Beauty, Snow White, the Frog Prince, and the story that I am going to tell you, which is Little Red Cap. Now, I think you know that Grimm stories, especially the original and unabridged versions of Grimm, are often known as being rather cruel and violent. And it's true, they were. And in fact, the brothers kept publishing all the way through the 1860s until they had almost 200 stories. But they gradually toned some of these stories down. Just a little aside, when my children were little, I bought a big book of Grimm's fairy tales. And every night I read to them. And they loved them. They absolutely, they were a little violent, yes, but they really liked them. In fact, my daughter just told me she still has the book. So here we go. This is the German Grimm version dating back to 1812 of Little Red Cap. Once upon a time, there was a sweet little girl. Everybody who met her loved her, especially her grandmother, who just couldn't buy her enough gifts. One day, her grandmother gave her a little red velvet cap, and she put it on, and she looked so nice in it, and it was so comfortable that she started to wear it every day. So everyone called her Little Red Cap. Well, one day her mother called to her and said, "Little Red Cap, here is some cake and here is some wine. Please take it to your grandmother because she is feeble and weak, and this will help her feel much better. Now, mind your manners and be sure and give her my regards. Oh, and something else. Do not stray off the path because then you might break the wine, and where would grandmother be? And also, when you enter the house, be sure and say good morning to your grandmother and don't peer in the dark corners." Does it sound like any of us? Little Red Riding Hood said to her mother, "I'll do everything just right." And she shook her mother's hand. Well, her grandmother lived in the woods about half an hour from her home. So Little Red Riding Hood had just entered the woods when a wolf appeared. Now, she had never seen a wolf before, and so she wasn't afraid, and she didn't know how wicked they were. "Good morning to you, my dear." "Thank you very much." "And where are you going today?" "Oh, I'm going to visit my grandmother." "And what is it that you have under your apron?" "Oh, I have some wine and some cake to give my grandmother because she's sick and feeble, and this will make her feel better." "And where does your grandmother live?" "Oh, my grandmother lives about a quarter of a mile from here. It's nestled in some 3 tall oaks, and there's some hazel bushes in front. Surely you know it." This girl would be a really juicy treat. If I do this right, I'll be able to eat both the girl and the grandmother if I'm sly enough. So the wolf walks along with the girl for a little bit, and then he says to her, "You know, little girl, did you notice all the beautiful flowers in the forest? Did you notice the dappled light coming down? Have you listened to the birds? Why, but you're going so fast, it's like you're on your way to school or something. You need to slow down, and then you need to like just enjoy the beauty of the forest. The little girl looked around, she opened her eyes, and she looked out at the forest floor and she saw beautiful white flowers, beautiful blue flowers. And so that's what she did. She went off the trail and she thought, I'll pick these flowers for my grandmother. These will make her happy. And she picked and she picked and she picked the flowers until she couldn't carry anymore. And then she looked up and she realized that it was getting a little late. Well, of course, the wolf made a beeline for the grandmother's cottage. Knocked on the door, knock, knock, knock. Who is it? Said Grandma. It's me, Little Red Riding Cap. Well, come in, my dear, please. I'm too feeble to get up and get it, so the latch is unlocked. You can just come in. Bam! That wolf knocked that door down. He went right over to grandmother, and he ate her completely up. But then he took her cap, and he took her glasses, and he took her shawl, and he crawled into bed, and he pulled everything down so you couldn't see. Oh, and he also closed the curtains. Well, a little while later, Little Red Cap comes skipping down the lane, and she notices that Grandma's door is open. She says, that's strange, and she peeks her head in, and she said, Grandma, where are you? No word. She said, why is it that I feel so afraid in a place that usually I am very happy? And she opened the curtains, and she turned to her grandmother lying in bed, and she said, Grandmother, what big ears you have! All the better to hear you with. Grandmother, what a big nose you have! All the better to smell you with. Grandmother, what a big hands you have! All the better to grab you with. Grandmother, what big teeth you have! All the better to eat you with. And with that, the wolf jumped up and he pounced on a Little Red Cap and he ate her all up. And then, because his stomach was so full, he laid down on the bed and he went to sleep and he started snoring really loudly. And meanwhile, there was a hunter who had been out hunting, and he walked by the cottage and he heard these loud snores and he said, that does not sound like grandmother. I think I'll go in and check and see how she is. So he goes in and he sees the wolf lying there asleep, and instantly he knows what has happened. He knows that wolf has eaten the grandmother. So he takes his knife and he slits the wolf's stomach open, and out pops Little Red Cap. And she says, "Whoa, it's really scary in there." And then, oh, there's the grandma. Out pops the grandmother. And she says, "Oh, I can hardly breathe, I can hardly breathe. I can hardly breathe." Well, Little Red Riding Hood took some big rocks and she put them in the abdomen of the wolf. And when the wolf woke up, he tried to move and he couldn't, and then he died. Well, all three of them were so happy because the hunter got the pelt, the wolf pelt. The grandmother got the cake and the wine. And as for Little Red Cap, she learned never, always to obey her mother and never to go off of the path. And that is the end of that story.